Today, Douglas County Sheriff Aaron Hansen promoted 4 deputies. The sheriff says that brings his command staff up to the appropriate size.
And as 6 News' John Chapman tells us, those promotions also include a deputy that will help deal with a growing number of behavioral health crisis calls.
Lieutenant Stan Benke, one of 4 Douglas County deputies promoted to command positions. Lieutenant Benke will oversee 2 overnight road patrol crews and 2 sergeants. The lieutenant tells us at night, deputies deal with higher stress calls, domestic violence, alcohol-related accidents, and a growing number of people dealing with a mental health crisis.
Unfortunately, it's something that we have to deal with as a society moving forward, and it is something that we have to do, on overnights where a lot of these resources aren't as readily available.
It didn't take Sheriff Aaron Hansen long to realize that Douglas County needs to grow its efforts to help people who call law enforcement to deal with mental health issues.
I've seen a constant theme, almost on a nightly, daily basis. Deputies are responding to behavioral health crisis calls.
Sheriff Hansen also promoted Sergeant Jarrett Langemeyer, who has a master's degree in clinical mental health.
Unfortunately, the state of mental health in America today is such that we don't always have a lot of outlets, and 911 becomes the de facto, when there's somebody's having a problem, they call 911. And so we become the frontline responders to mental health crises.
Sergeant Langemeyer has an idea of what that Douglas County front line will look like as they build their program.
And ideally what that will end up looking like is we'll have some co-responders and deputies that are assigned to a mental health division that have our crisis intervention training, and we'll look at getting them some other training, mental health first aid, things like that.
Langemeyer believes growing the Douglas County program, following up and making sure that people in crisis have what they need to get better, could help prevent a mental health crisis from growing into a criminal act.
We have a lack of resources that are following up with people, making sure that they're getting the things they need. And so I think as we grow, that's going to be part of that void that we're going to fill, is just following up with people and just getting them connected with the things that they need, so that it benefits all of society, really.
On your side in Douglas County, I'm John Chapman, 6 News.
Douglas County Sheriff officials say they believe the number of people calling 911 for mental health needs increased during the height of the pandemic. Sergeant Jason Mass and Sergeant Austin Pratt were also promoted to command positions.